The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio. From hot dogs to cool kitties, this is Darkside of the Pooch.
Boo! 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 Dr. Rab, what you got? Wow, you howled so loud it almost didn't come through the speaker. Do it one more time. Yeah, you have compression on your phone, dude. It's amazing. What are you doing, man? How you doing? Dr. Rab Stewart from the Rossbridge Animal Hospital joins us here for Darkside of the Pooch. You doing okay?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Anything interesting happening at the store here recently?
The only thing interesting is when I barked just then, because I'm actually at the office right now, and I'm here taking care of some stuff. And when I did that, all the dogs in the kennel just went nuts. They think I'm one of them.
Let me ask you that's a very interesting question. And by the way, this is Darkside of the Pooch. You can hear it every Monday at noon and 8 exclusively here on Tony Kurre Radio. And then soon on our Spotify platform of podcasts. You can go back and listen to all the shows, and there must be about 100 of them we do with Dr. Rab Stewart. Rossbridge Animal Hospital, 208-0301, 208-0301, Rossbridge Vet on Facebook and Twitter. When you walk outside and there's birds, we like to whistle like a bird, and we hope that maybe the bird actually thinks we're another bird, so it'll talk back to us. What do dogs hear when we bark? Do they think we're another dog, you think?
I think that they either think we're another dog, or they're just real confused or irritated. Like my dog barks anytime he hears anything that maybe shouldn't be happening.
Yeah.
So the doorbell rings, or somebody knocks at the door, or there's a weird noise outside. So I don't think that we're that good at mimicking dogs. I think that they just know it's a little bit off, and so they're going to bark at it, or they're going to howl at it, or whatever.
I know there's ways to train a dog to do anything because they're super smart animals, but if you have an animal, I like the fact that my dog would bark when it hears something that it doesn't know what it is, because obviously it could be a perpetrator, but when it's barking at every little thing, it does get super, super annoying. Is there a way to differentiate the times your dog barks?
I mean, I don't really think that you can differentiate, like an aggressive bark from a fearful bark. I think if you're playing with them and they kind of do that little play stance that they do where they, stick their butt up in the air and they're kind of doing a bark there. I mean, sometimes you can associate the bark depending on what's going on around them. But I think like a fear bark versus an aggressive bark, it's going to be the same thing, because it's kind of the same emotion with a dog. Fear and aggression are pretty much one and the same.
Yeah, one of the great things about this show is our Mutt Mail. We get a ton of emails every single week. Go to Darkside of the Pooch at TonyKurreRadio.net. That's Darkside of the Pooch. We now have our own mailbox. Darkside of the Pooch at TonyKurreRadio.net. You can also go to TonyKurreRadio.net and become a bonehead and sign up that way and leave your emails. We'll get to our Mutt Mail here in just a second. Got some great questions we'll get into. Deer Omicron. I saw this story, and obviously it's an animal story. I know you don't treat deer. I know you probably see a lot around Rossbridge, but evidently 18 deer have tested positive for Omicron up in New York State, and this is the first time that we know of that an animal has gotten the Omicron variant, not just COVID, because I know COVID is prevalent in cats, and you could talk about that and expound on that a little bit. What's going on there? The theory is they're drinking our wastewater, and the antibodies are actually living in our wastewater. Do you keep up on what's going on with this Omicron thing outside, obviously, the human element, but how it's affecting our animals?
I do, to some extent. Some of the kind of have to be careful, and I'm not saying this is a bad source by any means. I mean, obviously, they ran the test on these deer and it's positive, but as it pertains to domestic small animals, dogs and cats, nothing's really changed or come across the wire, recently. So that's what I keep up with. But you mentioned, cats and dogs, they've gotten coronavirus for, decades, and it's not COVID-19. It's a different type of coronavirus. And it can be a respiratory problem, or it can be a GI problem. So it's that type of coronavirus is not, it's not transmitted to people. It stays in dogs and cats. I just felt there's something new with this thing every it blows me away that this virus can be spread through wastewater. I mean, it's just, you can get it any way imaginable, through respiratory secretions. And now, fomites. With fomites is just like kind of a term for anything that can transmit things that like pathogens.
Yeah.
So, in our business, almost anything can be a fomite, because we get stuff on our hands.
What is a fomite?
So it's just, I think, by definition, a fomite is anything that could transmit a pathogen.
Gotcha.
So in school, one thing that they would tell us is don't be a fomite. And that just means, don't be all up in a pet's face with your hands and then go directly to another pet and start putting your hands in their face, So don't be a fomite. Don't transmit pathogens from one pet to another, but also a table, like an exam table, can be a fomite.
Yeah.
So between every visit, we use a special cleaner that we clean the tables with. Same way in human medicine. But brushes can be fomites. It's a word that just means you can transmit pathogens. Anything that can transmit pathogens. Well,
I'm telling you now that this is something that we probably need to get ahead of a little bit, and only from we looked at SARS, bird flu. What about mad cow disease, Rocky Mountain fever? I mean, there's been a lot of different things that humans have gotten from animals, and they've all been different types of things. As far as we know, now it appears that animals can get COVID or Omicron from us, but can they give it back to us? And I guess the only way to find that out is to eat a deer that's been infected with the Omicron virus. And would that be something? It's just bizarre to me, because it seems like when we first started talking about this 2 years ago, it was an impossibility. We talked about maybe keeping dogs away from other dogs because it could be passed that way. But as far as in dogs to humans, cats to humans, that was an impossibility. And now it seems like you said, the book is wide open.
Yeah. I mean, I think that in order to know that for sure, you would have to have a positive animal and then a non-positive human. And you would have to make it so that there's no possible way the human could get the virus from anything other than the animal. Yeah. So they would have to basically both be in isolation to figure that out. Because if there's any possibility that the human could get it from the pizza guy, that dropped pizza off or whatever. And so that'd be a really hard study to do. I mean, there's ways to do it. I'm sure. I mean, there's ways to do anything. There's a lot of smart people out there, but I don't, until you can make it 100% positive that the human did not get, there's just not possible for the human to get COVID from anything else other than the animal. I don't know that we'll ever know the answer to that.
Yeah. And I always thought it was interesting because I always heard, maybe this is a myth, but a cold can kill a dog. Is that yes or no? Like if a dog gets a cold?
Well, it depends on, I mean, if it's a healthy dog, then no. But, if the dog is already, if the dog is very young or very old, and it either doesn't have, if it doesn't mount a good immune response because it's too young and it hasn't been exposed to that kind of stuff before, or it's really old and already debilitated and has like a comorbidity, which means just like a already existing condition, then, a mild upper respiratory thing is not going to kill a dog. Like, for example, cats, they can get some viruses that can cause death because of respiratory issues, like feline infectious peritonitis. So peritonitis, most people will hear that and they'll say, well, that'd be more your abdominal cavity, which is true. But FIP can also be in the chest cavity, and it can cause respiratory problems. And it's a fatal disease for cats. Eventually, they will die from it. There's no cure. It's really hard to diagnose. So, I mean, there's some pretty nasty viruses out there that do affect their respiratory tract, but they're just not super common. I
always thought it was really interesting when you got a baby, and I know you've had several now, when you get that baby with the big crusty nose and the snot running down their lips, and the first thing the dog wants to do is go lick the kid's face because they like the way it tastes. And I'm always thinking, can my dog actually catch that cold? So we know that not to be true. This is Darkside of the Pooch. Go to Darkside of the Pooch. We have a brand new email out. Take all your emails, darksideofthepooch at TonyCurryRadio.net. That's Darkside of the Pooch at TonyCurryRadio.net. We'll read your Mutt Mail every single Monday. It's Mondays, Darkside of the Pooch, right here on Tony Curry Radio at noon and 8. Steve in Orange Beach wants to know, why does his cat suck on blankets? He said he's got a cat, and every time he sees it, the cat's usually chomping on a blanket. Why is that?
Yeah, I love that question by Steve. So it's kind of like, it's like thumb sucking in people and babies. So I'm not sure how old this cat is, but I would bet that it's at some point in its life, its developmental stage, it didn't get the proper socialization, either from the mother, when it was young, and maybe it was orphaned or, taken away too quickly, or just even after it would have been weaned, meaning, it's no longer nursing. Maybe there was some type of socialization missing. And so now it's doing the blanket chewing or blanket sucking. So it's a behavioral issue that, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the cat. It's just from a developmental standpoint, it missed out on something, when it was younger.
We could bring Dr. Josh in for this. We could do,
that'd be great.
Cat therapy. I never thought, and I thought maybe it was because it was teething or because cats just love to chew on everything, but that makes enormous sense. Mutt Mail here on Darkside of the Pooch. Trish in Atlanta says, why do cats always raise their hind ends, and stick them in your face whenever you get around them?
Man, I would love to be able to tell you I know why, but I have no clue. I don't. The only thing that maybe I could speculate is that's how a lot of dogs and cats will try to get to know each other. The first thing they do is kind of stick their face in each other's butts to kind of get their scent. So maybe it's a form of trying to get to know each other. It's the best I could come up with.
Is there not another way to get sense though? Because I get that dogs are always sniffing each other's butts, but whenever I'm around another dog and I come home, I know it's on. My dogs will be sniffing my jeans for like the next hour or two. Isn't there a different way to get that scent, or is that just the best way to find it?
No, I'm sure there's a different way, but dogs, they lick themselves, they lick their butt, they lick their feet, they lick their sides. So it might be that the reason that the dog is sniffing you is because of the scent from wherever it came from. It's possible that even if a dog didn't rub its butt on you, that scent is still there because the dog licked its butt and then licked its, the side of its arm. And then that's the part that rubbed up against you. And that just shows you how keen dogs' sense of smells are.
How far can dogs smell?
Oh, I have no clue. I have no idea, but that's, a long way,
It's pretty amazing.
Their senses are really heightened.
I love this question. Darkside of the Pooch and Mutt Mail right here on Tony Curry Radio. It airs every Monday at noon and 8. Fresh new shows right here, and soon coming on Spotify where you can go back and listen to all of our podcasts here. Wilma in Chattanooga says one of her favorite songs is Black Dog from Led Zeppelin. It's a song actually about a black dog that stood outside the recording studio when they were making it. Ask Dr. Rab what's his favorite song about an animal. I really like this question too. Fish is my favorite band. I love Fish, and they've got a bunch of songs about pets, a bunch of them. So, I saw them this past Halloween in Vegas, and they had a 4-night run, and I went to all 4. And one of the nights, they always do this crazy like gag for Halloween. They'll just do. Sometimes they'll cover a full album, or sometimes they'll write a whole album's worth of music and play it for the first time. And they're always trying to throw the fan base off. They're always trying to drop hints that aren't really hints about what they're going to play. Yeah. So the third night, the whole show was songs about animals, and most of them were originals. Oh, that's great. Filled up almost a whole 3-hour show of original songs about animals. So they've got a couple that I really like, and one is called Llama, and it's just a rocking song. And then they've got another one that's really long and drawn out, and they usually do some silly narration in the middle of it, and it's called Harpua. And that song is about a really nasty bulldog that just terrorizes a town. That's great. So those are the first two. But the Beatles have a lot of great animal songs too. Yeah. I'm the Walrus. Little Piggies, Blackbird. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's great. And by the way,
but so everyone thought when they played that whole show, they were like, oh, they're going to cover Pink Floyd's Animals tomorrow night. That was what they were going for.
Oh yeah.
And of course they didn't do that. They just played a whole, basically a full album of material that they wrote just for that night.
That's fantastic. By the way, you still owe me a Fish concert. We never went to our Fish concert together.
No, COVID.
I have never been to a Fish concert yet, so I want to go with you because I know you're the biggest Fish fan. This is Darkside the Pooch with Dr. Rab Stewart of the Rossbridge Animal Hospital at Rossbridge Vet on Twitter, as well as the Rossbridge Animal Hospital right there on Facebook. You give them a call anytime. They're the best. 205-208-0301, 205-208-0301. Bill in Birmingham wants to know, why do dogs get so excited to eat? He's like, listen, I'm all about eating too. I'm excited, but they know they're going to eat. Sometimes they get super excited, then they don't eat. They just sit there and look at it. Why do dogs get so excited when they hear that dry dog food hitting the bottom of the tin?
I think it's because that they just, they don't have as much to live for as we do. And I know that sounds kind of bad, but they just don't. Like, what do they have to look forward to? They look forward to you coming home from work. They look forward to maybe going out for a walk or throwing the ball outside, for a half hour or whatever it is. And then eating, that's all they got. So
yeah, that's true.
I think that's why.
That's true. It's kind of like guys with sex. I guess we just get super excited about it when we know it's going to happen and we just don't know what to do with ourselves.
That's right. I mean, what more do we have?
When you set a standard, and I told you about this because I've got 2 dogs upstairs. I used to have 4. And I started walking them every day around 3:30. Well, now every day at 3:30, man, they will not leave me alone. It could be pouring down rain, and they want to go. Or it could be 30 degrees outside. They want to go for a walk. When I know dogs learn a lot by obviously going through the same routine over and over and over again. But the more you do for a dog, does it expect more, or do you have to keep that up? Because a lot of people are like, I don't want to walk my dog every day, but I don't want to think I'm going to walk it every single day because then I feel like I'm disappointing my pet.
Yeah, they definitely pick up on that stuff. I mean, dogs they're smart, and they have, you can get them in a routine where they'll expect stuff, and food is the perfect example of that, or also going for a walk is a perfect example of that. You get them into a routine and they pick up on it and they expect it, and they'll act sad, if that routine is missed.
Yeah. Stymie in Rainbow City says, why do dogs take their food out of their bowl and then eat it on the floor?
That's a great question. My dog does it too. And the only thing that I could come up with is when they separate the food, they're not getting so much in their mouth at one time. If they can kind of pick it up and spit it out, maybe they can take it a little slower. But outside of that, I have no idea, because my dog will do it too. He'll use his tongue. He'll scoop up a few, he'll put them on the floor, and then he'll chomp them up. So I don't have a great answer other than that.
And my Australian Shepherd, amazingly enough, will not eat anything that's not in the bowl. Like, I'll drop a whole thing of Cheetos on the floor and he will not eat off the floor. But if I put the Cheetos in his bowl, he'll eat it. What does that mean? Well, I mean, what's up with that? Like, because dogs are great vacuum cleaners. If I spill something on the floor, I'm like, come and get it. And he'll sit there and just look at it. I'm like, lick it, eat it. He will not eat it.
Your dog's a germaphobe. He's not going to eat anything off the floor.
You think that's what it is?
Absolutely. I have no idea.
All right. Richard in Birmingham wants to know what that pink thing is in a dog's genitals and how to keep it from coming out. He said it happens every time he pets his dog. I'm assuming it's just like a human. It gets excited and it gets erect. Is that what that is? Yeah.
So this is not, I mean, it's not exactly comparing apples to apples, but I think that if we put it in these terms, people will grasp it. So dogs are not circumcised. So what you see on a dog most of the time, on a male dog, when it rolls over, that's his prepuce. Okay, so that's like the housing of the actual penis. It is not the penis.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of people
it's a jacket.
It's a jacket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A nice fur jacket. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's Joe Namath. It's a Joe Namath penis. This is what it is. Joe Namath's head pops out right there. Yes.
Right. Joe Namath's a bald head.
Yeah.
Even though Joe is not bald. So that's the prepuce. And so the thing that comes out is the actual penis. And even neutered dogs can, for a certain period of time, I mean, usually, it goes away, in old age, like other living things. But so that's they can still get an erection, and that's what that is. And then, the only way to really make it go away is just to ignore them, stop stimulating them, and then it'll go back in.
Yeah, that happens in humans too.
Yeah.
Talk about, you bring up spayed and neutered. Talk about exactly what happens when you spay or neutered an animal, and which one gets spayed, which one gets neutered, and what exactly goes along with, because a lot of people, obviously, we can help our pet population by having that done, obviously, when that happens. And can you reverse being spayed or neutered? In other words, once you have it done, can you go back to trying to have pups or kittens?
So a spay is what you do to a female. And you could, if you want to never be wrong, you can use the term neuter. The term neuter can be for male or female.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So if you don't want to have to remember which is which, you can technically be right if you just use the term neuter or alter. They're altered, Yeah. But so spay is for a female. And when we do this to a dog or cat, we remove the ovaries and the uterus. We don't leave the ovaries because we're trying to eliminate two things when we do this surgery. We're trying to eliminate sexual behaviors, because in a lot of situations, those are not ideal because they cause our pets to be aggressive. So we're trying to limit behaviors. We're also trying to limit the estrogen cycle because, it's messy. And then we're also trying to keep them from having babies. So everything comes out, the ovaries and the uterus come out. And it makes it so that they're not seeking a mate, and it makes it so they can't get pregnant. In dogs, neutering, we remove the testicles and then the spermatic cords and vessels that lead to the testicles. So neither one of these procedures can be reversed because you're removing the organs. So it's not like, it's not like you're just tying off for a vasectomy or just, taking that tube where the sperm go and making it so they can't go there anymore. You're removing the organs. It cannot be reversed.
Is there any type of medication you give an animal so it does not get pregnant, so you don't have to go through the neutering process, like the day after pill?
Not that I know of. But that would be an interesting thing to look into, because a lot of medications can be taken. Humans can take certain medications and dogs can take the same medication. So like we're kind of on this track. So I'll go here anyway, but dogs can take Viagra, and it's used for pulmonary hypertension. That's what it was made for in people, pulmonary hypertension. It just so happens in people that it also leads to an erection. In dogs, it does not do that because, and let me go back. Dogs with pulmonary hypertension, I've never had one on sildenafil, which is Viagra. Yeah. I've never had a non-neutered dog on that. So to be honest with you, I don't know if it causes an erection in dogs or not because I've never had an intact dog on it.
So you're saying that you could have a bald Joe Namath come out if you give your dog the blue pill? It's possible.
You could. You could.
Well, you need to do some research on that. Sit in your office one day and let me know what you come up with.
Let's get Pfizer. Let's get Pfizer to come in and they can be some kind of sponsor or something and just donate boatloads of sildenafil to my office. That probably wouldn't go well.
We need to probably barter some of that with Tony Curry Radio too, because I'm 55. You never know. So a lot of people will cut the tails off animals because aesthetically, it's more aesthetically pleasing. Correct? This is something that people do, and it's common practice. It's weird because when people first started doing that, I imagine a lot of people didn't like the fact that they had their dog's tails cut off. Have you ever had someone neutered or a dog neutered from an aesthetic standpoint? Because there are some types of dogs where it's not pleasant to see.
I've never had anyone do it well that I know of for aesthetic reasons, but something that you will in one case several years ago, I had a client who had a dog that he did not want to neuter because he didn't like the look of a non-neutered dog.
Oh,
I'm sorry. He did not like the look of a neutered dog. Okay. So he wanted to neuter his dog, but he didn't like the look of it. So he asked me if we could put prosthetics in, which you can. Well, at least at this time you can. They were called nudicles. and they were just fake testicles. And it's
what?
And it's not as simple as just like popping a couple of balls in the scrotum and just letting them roll around.
Yeah.
And they're kind of expensive too.
I would think,
yeah. So once we went through the whole process with him, he decided not to do it. But there are people out there that they don't like the look of having that kind of floppy sack there once it's gone.
Yeah.
And I've also had people ask if we can remove the scrotum, which you can, but there's some complications there because the scrotal tissue, when you sew it together, sometimes it doesn't heal well. And so you end up that wound will dehisce or open up, and it just has a lot of complications.
Oh, that's absolutely amazing. I don't even, did the guy also have a giant boat and a big car too? Because it sounds like he's a little insecure about his own dog.
I cannot reveal any other information.
I saw this great, I love these animal shows, and I was watching this show called Castles, Wild Castles. It's a show about different castles around the world. They talk about the wildlife that lives in and around the castles. It's great because you learn two different things at the same time. They were talking about snails. You know the crazy thing about snails, right? Escargot?
Lay it on me.
They have both the male and the female organ.
Oh yeah, hermaphrodites.
They're hermaphrodites, and so when they meet, they exchange the sperm, and then they fertilize the sperm. They obviously can't have snails without meeting another snail, and it does take 12 hours. By the way, they do like snails do. It's super slow, and so they exchange it, they get it done, which I think is amazing because then I was watching Jurassic Park, and there was the scene there where they only made female genetically altered dinosaurs to prevent them from mating so they could keep track of how many dinosaurs they had in the park. But then there was an egg, and the guy said, life finds a way. When you put a bunch of females on an island or a bunch of males on an island, they will figure out a way to reproduce. Do you think that could happen with dogs?
No. I mean, I think that
you put two dogs on an island or a bunch of dogs on an island for like 100 years, you don't think they'd figure out a way? You don't think life would find a way?
There would have to be something that could mate with the dog. Like, I think if you put in, all males or all females, I think that they would all die off.
Yeah.
Before that would happen. Like the lifespan of a dog is going to be 16 years, and I just don't think that there's not going to be enough time there for something crazy to happen. But I don't even think that would be possible. Like, if you had like a wild dog, like if you dumped a bunch of domestic dogs on an island,
yeah,
and there, was a wolf or a coyote of the opposite sex, then, maybe over time, as long as they felt okay, being in close proximity, then I think that it could happen. But it's not like you have to have a similar genetic makeup to be able to reproduce. And I just don't think I think everything would die off, before that, anything crazy like that could happen.
Life would find a way one way or another. He is Dr. Rab Stewart of the Rossbridge Animal Hospital at Rossbridge Vet on Twitter, the Rossbridge Animal Hospital on Facebook. Their number is 205-208-0301, 208-0301. And of course, every Monday's Darkside of the Pooch Day. We do it at noon and 8 every Monday right here on Tony Curry Radio, and coming soon, our Spotify platform of great podcasts. You'll be able to go back and listen to, we've probably done 100 of these shows, and this is maybe one of our funnest shows we've done. Dr. Rab, thank you so much. I love you, and I'll talk to you next week.
Love you, Tony. Thanks, man.
Thank you, brother.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio.